So somebody had written in asking, it's one of the fathers in our extended community, if I could speak a little bit about having love and compassion for your children, having a feeling of bodhicitta towards your children, and being attached to your children. And so what's the difference between those? So this is a very complicated topic, especially with the word attachment, because in the way psychologists use the word attachment means something different than the way Buddhists mean it. So in psychology, children need to attach to their parents. There needs to be that relationship for the child to develop. Yeah, and they've done it with monkeys and all sorts of species, and the children do very well when there's some attached relationship, if not with a parent, then with some other adult in their life. And so that's one meaning of attachment. That's not the meaning that Buddhism means. Buddhism is talking about attachment in the sense of regarding children, where there's really a sense of possessiveness, a sense of living through your children, of wanting your children to do, be, and have everything you aren't, of favoring your children over every other living being. Yeah, and so while this is totally natural and acceptable in a worldly sense and expected, and in fact, if people don't favor their children over everybody else in a worldly sense, then people think that they don't care enough for their kids. But in a Buddhist sense, when we're talking about love and compassion and so on, we're talking about wishing everybody to be happy equally, which is love, and wishing them to be free of suffering equally, which is compassion. So of course, in a Buddhist sense, we want to cultivate love and compassion leading up to bodhicitta for every living being. You're going to act differently towards your children than you're going to act towards other people, because in this lifetime you have a different relationship with your children than you do with other living beings. Yeah, so when we talk about love and compassion and impartial love and compassion, it doesn't mean you treat everybody else the same, because there are different social roles and social expectations. So don't get confused about that. Having love and compassion in a Buddhist sense for a stranger doesn't mean you invite them into your house and, tell them to help themselves to the refrigerator or whatever, okay? So there's still appropriate social ways of acting, okay? But I think here the person's asking a question more about, how can you tell the difference between when you really have love and compassion for your kids and want them to be well and happy and want them to be free of suffering, and when you're being attached to your children and wanting them to be happy and free of suffering, coming from attachment rather than coming from love and compassion. And so I think the key here is how much, whether there's impartiality, in other words, whether we can generate that same feeling of affection and wanting somebody to be happy and free of suffering for others as we do for one's own children. Okay? So this is very difficult, extremely difficult, because parents have this, a natural attachment that comes for their kids, and that's the way it is. Often the Buddha talks about having affection and love for others as if they were our own parents, using that example. Sometimes they use the example of having love and compassion and affection and caring towards others as if they were your own children. Yeah. So I think you can actually use either example. So if you have a lot of care and affection for your children, then to realize, to try and generate in your mind that same feeling of care and affection for other children as well, and then slowly spread it towards more and more beings, instead of just keeping it limited to your own children or to all children or whatever. Okay? But the idea is, as much as we can get the I out of it, that makes us partial, that makes us towards somebody, that makes us have more expectations of them than we do of others or whatever, then the more grounded the relationship actually becomes, because I think one thing that why parents suffer so much when their children grow up because the children don't do what you want. You don't suffer when other kids don't do what you want. But when your own kids don't do what you want, you're pulling your hair out. Yeah. So why is that? Yeah. So that's the difference there, where there's some attachment coming in. Yeah. So as much as possible, you want to take that feeling for your own children and spread it to all living beings. And I find that actually quite helpful. I know when George Bush was president, it was very helpful for me to think of him as a baby, when he was a baby. And that when he was a baby, he was really cute. When he was a toddler learning to walk and learning to talk, he was really cute. And that really helped me not have some kind of solid image about who he is, but to realize, everybody's been adorable children at one time or another. Okay? So, that might help you to see that, about other people that you have difficulties with, to see them in the same way as you saw your own children when they were babies, as just totally adorable, even though they pooped and peed and threw up all over the place. You didn't mind at all. Yeah? So that's a level of tolerance that, parents have that's quite amazing. So if we can develop that towards other living beings, it might be very helpful. They don't necessarily poop and pee and throw up over us, physically, but they might verbally. Yeah. And so being able to, be patient and withstand that is very, very helpful. Okay. If somebody's a parent, I wouldn't really beat yourself up for, favoring your children over other people, It's not something to criticize yourself about, but it's something to see the more you can take that same feeling of affection and really extend it to others, the more your heart's going to get big, and the more you'll have better relationships with lots of different people. It doesn't mean that you're taking anything away from your children, of course, yeah. But you're able to extend that feeling towards more and more people, which is very helpful. The person who asked it also asked if there were any scriptural references about this. So I haven't. I can't remember the names of the suttas where he talks about seeing people as your children. However, the Buddha did in the Sigalovata Sutra, Sigalo, in case you want to look it up. In that sutra, he did talk about relationships like between an employer and employee and teacher and student. And so he did talk about it, the relationship between the parent and the child. Okay, so this is an ancient Indian, according to an ancient Indian society, yeah, but a lot of it holds true now. So I thought I would just bring this. I talk about it in Taming in the Mind on page 87. Okay, so the Buddha told Sigalo, householder, in these 5 ways, parents discharge their responsibilities towards their children. So first, they restrain them from negative action. So, you teach your kid good ethics, and I think that's one of the primary responsibilities of being a parent is teaching your child, good behavior, the difference between appropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior, and and also teaching your child about how to think about what is ethical and what isn't, what criteria to use, how to evaluate and assess difficult situations. Okay, the second one is to establish them in virtuous actions. So to teach your children about virtue, encouraging your children to be generous, encouraging them to be kind, encourage them to share their possessions, and this thing, if someone punched you, you punch them back. Maybe teach your children nonviolent communication instead of instant retaliation. Okay? And this whole thing about teaching kids to be generous, I think there can be a very beautiful way kids can do that, where they in the Jewish tradition, the children have their own quote quote piggy banks, and every week they're supposed to put some money in it. But this piggy bank is explicitly for to give away to other people. So I think, encouraging your kids to give their toys away, or if they have some savings or some allowance, to save it and then give it to other people who need it. And I think it's even more effective if you take your child down to the food bank or down to the hospital for kids with cystic fibrosis or whatever it is, and have your child directly with their own hands make the offering. I think that can be a very good experience for a child, making them, not taking their own life for granted, and helping them to appreciate what they have, as well as cultivating generosity. The third one is to educate them in the arts and sciences. So yes, parents do, have you show your love to your children by helping them get a good education. And even if they're kicking and screaming and, don't want to learn, then try and find a way of learning that interests your children, because regular school, some people thrive in regular school, other people that's just not their thing. It has nothing to do with intelligence, it just has to do with your learning style and your personality. So some people learn very much by doing stuff. So maybe you educate your child by doing a lot of things with them, not just by seeing that they go to school and do their homework. But, you take them to the museum, and you take them on outdoor camping trips, and you take them to other countries and help them get a good education. Fourth, and this is in the context of ancient India, provide them with suitable wives and husbands. Because in ancient India you had arranged marriages, and you still do now in modern India in many cases. If you go in a New Delhi newspaper, in the classified section, you'll find advertisements for parents, looking for suitable spouses for their kids. I wouldn't try this in America. Okay, and then to give them their inheritance at the proper time. Okay, so actually if you think about that, not spoiling your children by giving them easy access to all the money they want. Yeah, because that can really give kids a very distorted sense of how to deal with the realities of economics, I think it can be more helpful teaching your children how to write checks and balance a checkbook, teaching them how to use a credit card wisely so that you don't max it out and don't get in credit card debt. Now, of course, to teach your children to do that, parents have to do that themselves. Maybe I should talk about something else. Yeah, but really, I think giving your kids a sense of fiscal responsibility is very important nowadays. So they don't just kind of say, well, I want this, mom and dad will give it to me. But they get a sense of, working to earn something. They get a sense of saving, instead of just, I want something, going out and buying it. So that kids get a sense of really asking themselves, is this something I need or is this something I want? You know, because otherwise we grow up into adults who every time we see something, I want this, I want that, we want to spend the wad on everything. And as soon as something gets a little bit old, well, throw it away, get a new one. But as an adult, that doesn't work, you know, unless you have unlimited money. Yeah, so if you grow up with that kind of relationship towards money and possessions, it can really be a difficulty when you get older to learn to be satisfied with things and to learn how to take good care of things so that they last for a long time. So I think this too is a way of showing love and affection for your kids, is teaching them these kinds of things, giving them skills so that they know how to deal with the world. And you can do this very much in the context of loving the children. Yeah? In other words, when they make mistakes, and they will make mistakes, you know, not telling them that they're bad and inadequate and stupid, but just saying, okay, you made a mistake, here, let's try it, and, you know, let's try it again, and let's do it this way. Okay? So in other words, when somebody makes a mistake, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. Yeah? You keep your discussion of a person different from the discussion of their actions. Yeah? So, okay, you made a mistake, you know, tore up your sister's whatever it was, okay? Well, here's how, you know, let's do it, how to do it a different way next time, and here's how to communicate about the conflict better next time. But it doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you did that. Okay? And I think too often people will say to children, oh, you're a bad boy, you're a bad girl. And that doesn't really give kids any helpful information except knowing that their parent is unhappy with them. They don't necessarily understand why their parent is unhappy, what they did that needs to be changed. So it's better to be very specific about the actions and to always encourage children with, you are a good person, and here's how to have the skills so you can express your goodness in relationship to other people. Okay?